Hello, hello, Summer of Ruby. Thank you all so much for having me as part of this event. My name is Hobozone, most probably known by most of you in the community as... Wait, who's this guy? For those of you that don't know, a very, very long time ago, I made what is, to my knowledge, or at least from what I've been told, one of the earliest RWBY fan games, known as RWBY Vale of Darkness, a RPG Maker game that incorporated a few elements from different RPG games that I kind of enjoyed at the time, and basically injected them into RWBY Volume 1 and 2 to make a weird hodgepodge of a game that seemed to be generally enjoyed by the community. So it was very cool of the organisers of this event to reach out to me and ask if I wanted to be a part of it, which I absolutely am honoured to be so. It was really nice actually to kind of take a nostalgic trip down memory lane for me, as this game was a huge part of my developmental years, and you know, it kind of changed my life in a way. So I'm really, really happy to talk about its kind of production and all of that with you guys. The organisers of the event have provided some kind of questions that they gave to the kind of fan game creators who are a part of this event. I had to adjust the questions slightly to basically work in the past tense, because most of the questions were for people who are currently working on projects, again, to which I salute you. Indie game development is extremely tricky. But I'm quite happy to answer these questions, to chat a bit about the creation of the game and the effect that it had on me as a person. In the background, you'll be seeing some gameplay footage from the first hour or so of the game, which may give you an idea of what it was about. And yeah, I mean, if you want to play the game, I'm sure it'll be linked somewhere. I'm not exactly sure how this video is going to be delivered to all of you, if it's just going to be a YouTube upload that you guys will be watching, or if it'll be live streamed, but basically just Google RWBY Vale of Darkness, and I'm sure you'll find it. You're going to have to forgive me. I am a YouTuber at the moment, at least as a side thing, and a lot of my videos are basically just unscripted nonsense, so that's what this is going to be, because it's what I feel most comfortable with. So if there's a lot of kind of slip-ups and errors and things I forget, that's probably why. But I've got some notes. I'm actually reading off some notes here, so let's get started. First question they've got for me here: is this project your first venture into indie game development, or did you have previous experience? It was my full first dive into indie game development. I mean, I was kind of just, I never really considered myself an actual game developer, because all I really did was I took a bunch of scripts from other online creators, such as like Vlu, Yanfly. If you know RPG Maker development, you would know, you kind of know all the script creators. If somebody made a script for RPG Maker, I probably used at least one of theirs, and pulled together some sprites and assets from various different parts of the internet, and basically just put it all together in the big machine until it worked. And it barely works, but it did. It was a full game at the end of the day. So it was definitely my first time actually making a game, I guess you could say, even though I didn't really do any of the heavy legwork. I just kind of made all the events and balanced it. Balanced, I say in quotations. But technically I did have some smaller projects ahead of time where I was testing the waters. I did make a short, horror game in RPG Maker, because those were very big at the time, things like Mad Father and such like that. But that never really went anywhere. It was public for a while, but then I took it down because it was genuinely terrible. No, so yes, Vale of Darkness was my first, and as of now, only foray into game development. I did try some other projects after Vale of Darkness, but none of them really worked. I kind of spread myself a bit too thin, overworked myself, and set my expectations a bit too high, and then ended up being unable to make a product that I was actually happy with, so those kind of petered out. But as what I was able to do with Vale of Darkness, the fact that I was able to fully complete that project, send it, ship it, keep it updated, and make a game that people actually like, I'm quite proud that this was kind of my one and done foray into game development. Quit while you're ahead, I guess. Next question. Did you work as a team or was this a solo project? As I kind of just stated, while I did make the game myself, I did pull in a lot of scripts and sprites made by other people. Unfortunately, because I don't have the original game files on my system anymore, I couldn't find the full list of credits. But in the game, I do credit everybody whose assets I used, and there is all the common popular script makers for RPG Maker. So like I said, Yamfly, Flu, Works. There's a bunch of people who I could openly credit if I wasn't an idiot and didn't get my notes together ahead of time, but hey ho, like I said, I never directly worked with anybody, but I did use other people's work to make this game, and so pretty much all the credit goes to them. I just typed words in a text box until a story was somewhat written. Why make a RWBY fan game as opposed to another IP or your own indie game? Now, this is a pretty loaded question because it kind of gets into the point where, how important RWBY was in my life at the time. Like I said, I was about 14, 15, and like most teenagers, especially growing up in the conditions that I did, times were tough, and RWBY at the time was a pretty big distraction. Volume 2 had just finished releasing, and I binge-watched the whole thing because I was a fan of other Rooster Teeth content at the time, and as such, I kind of just watched this on a whim, and it was through RWBY that I kind of learned to really love that kind of animation, that sort of storytelling, and kind of paid more attention to the actual production side of things, because I started watching RWBY not long after Monty Ohm had passed away. And when I learned about Monty, about everything he is, and I say is because his influence is still felt to this day, even in the way I go about things now, he was a man who was unapologetically creative. Everything he did was because he wanted to do it, and his unbound imagination was just something to absolutely behold. But his drive, his ethic, his character was just so inspiring to me at the time. I think I remember watching Rooster Teeth's In Remembrance of Monty Ohm video not long after watching RWBY and just thinking, wow, what an actually incredible man. And that video was actually what inspired me, not even RWBY itself, but that Monty Ohm Remembrance video was what inspired me to do this project. I'm a pretty big RPG guy. They are the games I tend to lean towards the most, and have done as I've grown up. Because again, when you don't get to buy many games, playing long RPGs is definitely a way to kind of make your money worth it. I was very big into a couple of other games at the time, and so I incorporated those into the Vale of Darkness game. But again, I just loved RWBY, and I think as I was developing Vale of Darkness, Volume 3 actually started airing, and as such I was kind of able to see that as it was coming out, and kind of that reinvigorated my hype. But yeah, I think I just wanted to work with RWBY. I feel like a fan game, especially when it comes to RPG Maker games, a fan game is definitely kind of the better route to go. I didn't really just want to come up with my own characters or do stuff like that. I actually wanted to make something for an IP that I loved, and at the time, that was RWBY. It was just one of my obsessions at the time, and so everything just fell into place. Next question, how long did you work on your project? Well, from the first day I started working on it until, I would say, the first full release, version 1.0, I would say that took about 6 months. And then after that, I would say there was probably an extra month or two that was for patches and big gameplay updates and such like that. So overall, I'd say the full development period was about 8 months. And I kind of just did it by getting into a rhythm. Again, I made this game when I was about 15, so that it would explain probably a lot about the game's writing. But basically what would happen is I would go to school, get home, work on the game for an hour, and then stop. And that would be my schedule. Go to school, come home, work on the game, repeat. On the weekend, I'd do a little bit more. And I just got into that rhythm, and before I knew it, 6 months later, the game was done. Now, that is not easy for a lot of people to do, especially when you're when you're at school or working full time, for people to be able to do that. But just finding that rhythm really, really helped me. And again, it just gave me a much greater appreciation, especially whenever I ran into bugs or glitches. It just gave me a greater appreciation for how much game developers actually have to do, especially indie game developers. And again, solo developers are just absolute gods. I don't even know how they do it properly. I mean, again, I didn't even do any of the heavy work. The fact that I'm even here in this event at all, being put on the same pedestal as genuinely great developers here, I must say, I feel like I'm cheating the system a little bit. I must admit. But anyways, yeah. So I would say the project was about 6 months, give or take an extra month or two, for sure. What type of genre is your project? Well, it's an RPG, I already said that. And what were some other non-RWBY inspirations you incorporated into your project? Aha! This is a fun one. So, as I said, Vale of Darkness is an RPG. I took a lot of inspiration for the overall gameplay design from the Final Fantasy series, particularly my first Final Fantasy game, which was Final Fantasy 13. Don't judge me, I do still like those games. They're good. At the very least, you can say the first one's good. Come on, you can give me that. And the big thing I kind of wanted to... And it kind of gave me an idea, right? For the battle system. So, the Vale of Darkness battle system is actually an action time battle system. And I wanted to go with that, well, because Final Fantasy 13 is action time battle, but also because I wanted to, even though it was an RPG, I wanted to kind of replicate the kind of speed of RWBY as a show. Because RWBY is a very fast show. A lot of the combat is very high action, very fast paced. And I felt like a turn-based RPG wasn't really going to capture that the way I wanted it to. Making it an action time battle system that actually rewards fast decision making on the part of the player, that felt good to me. So that is what I ultimately decided to go with. And in the end result, again, the game is not balanced in any way. If I was just able to beat the fight during testing, that was good enough. It actually does feel like quite quick and fluid. It even got to the point where some people who were playing the game were actually going so quick with their decision making that it would cause the game to crash, which is funny to me. But I still kind of like that aspect of the game. I think the action time battle system really did actually work to the game's favor. I think if I was to do it now, I would probably do a turn-based RPG just because I think that's a bit more user-friendly. But I'm still happy with what the game kind of turned out to be now, and I don't think I'd change anything about the way I did it back then. I do think the action time battle system definitely worked in its favor. The other big inspiration, which is so obvious that if anybody didn't notice it, I'd be shocked, is the inspiration from the Persona series from Shin Megami Tensei. Straight down to the fact that I use sound effects from those games in that game. The big thing of Vale of Darkness was the Persona-esque social system. Basically, the game functions on the kind of day-to-day basis, similar to a Persona game. Each day you go to class, and each day, depending on the day it is, you can hang out with a different member of the RWBY cast, doing little friendship events, which are basically just rip-off social links that basically gave the characters each a bit of something to do with the main character, which I'll get into later, as well as being able to share a bit more of their personality. I was able to pull elements from the trailers into like some of these events, like you actually do the events of the yellow trailer in one of Yang's events, for example. Stuff like that. I was able to pull in a ton of inspiration from that, and then give the player and everybody certain bonuses depending on the friendship rank, and if you're able to get like everyone's friendship rank to max, you get like a different ending. And that's the kind of thing that was a big draw, I think, for a lot of people, was the fact that it was basically fan fiction in video game form that I was able to, while staying as much into the confines of the canon as I could with the concept I was going for, because that was actually a big goal of mine, was to not go too far non-canon. I think it actually worked out for the benefit. I absolutely loved writing for all of the characters, even though I wasn't really sure what to do with some of them. I felt that I quite enjoyed writing for all of them. There were some parts that I did not know what I was doing, because yes, as per Persona game kind of inspiration, there was romance options. And as somebody who's recently found out they are aromantic, you can see why those probably didn't work out well for a lot of people. I remember a lot of the comments I got at the time, actually, where it's like, has this dude ever been in a relationship? This is not how attraction works. Turns out, no! I really did not know what I was doing, but I still think the game is fun regardless. I think I'm better at writing people as friends, let's just say that much. But again, I do think those, like the kind of Persona style things, and there was a ton of side quests as well in the game, and the parts of the story that were completely unique to Vale of Darkness, I do think kind of worked. I definitely could have made a better antagonist overall, I do think. But without spoilers, the way I managed to tie it back into the canon, in my opinion, I thought was personally quite fun. Apparently it tugged on a lot of people's heartstrings. But yeah, I quite enjoyed the development of Vale of Darkness in that respect. But yeah, the biggest inspirations were Persona and Final Fantasy, and of course the RWBY show itself. Next up, what game engine did you use and why? Have you ever switched engines during development? Well, at the time, RPG Maker, since that was my, kind of preferred engine of choice, I used the VX Ace version, as that was the newest version at the time, and for making fan games in the style that I wanted to, that being an RPG, it was by far the easiest system to work with, especially with the wide library of assets that I could pull from. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much else to say there. I mean, it worked out quite well. I think RPG Maker MV did come out, or at least was starting to come out by the time I kind of got to the end of updating the game. So technically I could have updated it to a more modern version of the engine, I suppose, but nah, RPG Maker VX Ace all the way. What would you say makes your particular fan game fun or unique? I hate myself because I wrote notes on what I was going to answer for this, and I literally just put, honestly, I don't know. And to be honest, that's kind of the truth. I don't know why this game resonated with so many people. I mean, the game has 70k downloads. That's 10k a year, which, if we're being honest, is kind of impressive. I don't like to toot my own horn so much, but for someone who just threw this together with no idea what he was doing, I'd say that's a pretty nice accomplishment. Definitely made me, happy to say that I've done it, that so many people are able to enjoy it. But I honestly can't say why. When I replayed the game to get the footage that you're seeing in the background at the moment, I got frustrated. I'm like, the random encounters are so annoying. I'm like, I accidentally activated this quest that teleported me into this massive map that I have no clue how to get out of. And I got frustrated, but then I got to the point where, again, I'm doing, RWBY's first social event, or, I'm playing through some of the story, and there's, some funny bits of dialogue that I added in there, or how I kind of twisted some scenes to work with this new main character, which, again, I'll speak about later, because there's a question dedicated to that. I felt as much as I don't think this is a good game, at least by the standards that I would hold today, I'm still impressed by what I was able to do all those years ago. And perhaps it is that kind of rough edges charm that makes it work for so many people. And hey, for all I know, maybe I did do some half-decent writing. Because I think, again, at least for me, the character writing must be the game's strongest point. But I honestly don't know what made this game fun or unique. I mean, perhaps the unique part comes from putting this Persona-style twist on RWBY, because it kind of works, again, the whole school thing, and I guess perhaps it delved more into the fact that this is, at least in the early volumes, a show about somebody going through school, and I don't think that was really showcased that much in the original show, outside of a few things. So the fact that you actually kind of got to see the day-to-day of someone who lived in Beacon and was a student there, maybe that was good for some people. And again, I tried to incorporate many different, characters and different quests and such like that. And again, there's 10 friendship and social events for each character. And I even added extra social events in that, had other characters kind of mixing and matching, the prank scene and such like that. If I can think of a few. Again, I forget most of this game, surprisingly. I only played a little bit of it. But, I mean, I can't explain it. I don't know why the game was as successful as it was, but I'm happy that it was, because again, if at least even a couple of people enjoyed it, then that makes it worth it. And it seems like a lot more than a couple did, so, I mean, to anybody who has played the game, thank you so much for giving me your time, and I do truly hope you enjoyed that game, because I enjoyed making it. Even if more often than not nowadays, I tend to rag on it a bit, because oh boy, what was I thinking with some of that stuff? What was the biggest pitfall you encountered when making your fan game? Well, other than the stuff I've already said, balancing. Balancing an RPG as a solo developer is incredibly tricky. Again, I already kind of touched on this a little bit, but trying to make it so each fight felt fair at each stage of the game, for me, who has the attention span of a flea, that was pretty much impossible. At the end of the day, I would play through the game like as a player would, just through the story mode as part of testing. And if I could beat the fight at the level I was at, I say that was good enough for me. And then I gave up like really quickly on trying to balance things properly. A big complaint that I got with the first release of the game is that the final boss was just way too much of a difficulty spike, and the extra super boss that was hidden inside the video game in the bedroom was very, very difficult as well. To the point where some people were like easily like in the kind of area where that boss was, they'd like leveled up to like level 99 really early and then swept the rest of the game. So in some cases it was too easy, in some cases it was way too hard. But either way, yeah, definitely balancing is the hardest thing to do with an RPG like that. So if you're going to make an RPG as a solo developer, get some testers, get people who are willing to test for you. In fact, I did get people to test for me. Someone who I only knew at the time by their GameJolt username, Akanato, who is now probably one of my oldest friends, is Fatboy Smo, who they, as they now are known as, and they also, you know, they hang around on the internet, they make content here and there, and they're a super fun person, and they've been great. We get on Discord calls every so often and just chat, and they are still to this day one of my longest standing friends, and I met them through this game, so heck, making it was worth it for that alone. But yeah, they helped with the balancing side of things, telling me what was too easy and what was too hard, and that kind of helped. But the game is still an absolute nightmare as far as balancing is concerned. Okay, this is a big question, because this kind of shaped the whole game. Does your game focus on a particular character from the show, or is it centered on a new original character? And why did you choose this/these characters? Well, another big part of Vale of Darkness is the player's custom character. Basically, you got to choose at the start of the game from a couple of preset colors, you got to name your custom character, and you actually got a player avatar that you played through the game with, who was an addition to the story. And in which case, I was able to tweak the story a little bit. Basically, you kind of have this natural talent for fighting, because your semblance is mimicry, so you're able to mimic other people's fighting styles and semblances, so as you leveled up their friendship events, you could also use their semblances in order to become this like all-in-one Omega package of fighting, and it was really, really fun. You could also use other people's weapons. It just basically gave you this big kind of creative freedom. I also had the character have their own original class of weapon as well, for twin pistol katanas, which at the time I didn't realize I was ripping off Attack on Titan from, but now I kind of know, I kind of see where that may have come out from, as some people pointed out. But yes, the big thing about the game was this extra character and how they influence the story. Things like, because they were an extra character that Ozpin wasn't initially going to have as part of the the new student roster in Beacon, he ended up kind of being a go-between between Team Juniper and RWBY, which is how I justified being able to mix and match for two teams to create your own RPG party, and also allowed me to go from having only 4 people in a party fighting at once to 5 instead. So you have 5 party members fighting at once in this game. And it just felt really, really fun to kind of write for this character. They are mainly a blank slate for the player to project on, but I did actually give them their own little quirks and personality through the dialogue options that you do have. Again, very similar to a Persona protagonist. Looking back on it, I might have tried to do a bit more with them, but I kind of just wanted to give them their own kind of separate story as they went throughout the game, and then I pulled some Kingdom Hearts bullshit towards the end, or just general Final Fantasy bullshit, where it's like, you know, the world knows that this character isn't canon and that something has to be done, and I pulled some bullshit, but it was fun. It was a fun little thing, and again, I think that was another one of the main draws of the game, was that you get to play as essentially you, in a way. You could basically choose a male or female character. Oh no, you couldn't. You could only choose a male character. I forgot about that. I added female characters in a different update, which never saw the light of day, and I'll get to that later. But for now, yeah. You basically got to play as this character, and you got to play through the game, and you got to interact with all these characters. I guess for a lot of people, perhaps it was like an escapism fantasy, where it's like, hey, I'm actually hanging out with the characters of RWBY, and I get to be this super cool badass character who can use everybody's powers, and oh my god, this game was written by a 15-year-old. Oh, man. I've never written a piece of fan fiction in my life, and then I made a whole game. I just skipped the first steps. But yeah, the big draw was the new original character that you got to control. And yeah, that was pretty much one of the primary aspects of the game. Now, let's see, what is the next question here? Have the events from the canon show affected events in your story or even the development of the game? Well, as I said, Volume 3 was coming out at the time that the development was kind of wrapping up. So I was able to throw in a few Easter eggs to future events in there, hinting at things like Pyrrha's death, and such like that, a bit more into the kind of using like the Four Maidens as a bit of the backstory, although I completely got that wrong as far as predicting what would happen in the show there. And a few other little hints here and there as to things that might happen in the future, at least as far as Volume 3 is concerned. A lot of people are asking me to update the game of Volume 3, which I did kind of have an intention to do, but in the end, like I said, dropped it. But yeah. So basically, Volume 3 had very small influence over the game's final product. What would you say is the primary focus of your game? Story, graphics, music, or gameplay? Oh, story, by far. Everything else was supplementary to the story that I was writing. Again, I really wanted to focus on the character interactions and, you know, the main story, the story of the main character and how they influence the world around them. It was always story and how that character would interact with the rest of the cast. I've basically gone over this already. Gameplay, obviously, was a second. I really wanted the gameplay to be decent in that regard, and again, just kind of capturing that like kind of fast-paced RPG kind of action, I think kind of worked. Again, definitely would do stuff differently now. The random encounters especially were particularly annoying. I would definitely do overworld enemies next time. Graphics, I mean, I'm not an artist. I've attempted to draw things or do sprite art in the past and have failed miserably. So all of the graphics were just sourced from various places online, and yeah, those made up the game. So they were kind of basically a requirement rather than something I focused on. And finally, music. In a similar vein, I just pulled music from the show. Which, because I didn't think anybody on YouTube was going to be playing the game at the time, I didn't think was going to cause any issues. Good thing I had the option to add your own custom music, because otherwise that could have been bad. I even included clips from the show for some cutscenes. So yeah, I know any YouTuber who had to play that game definitely had a time of it. Apologies. But yeah, story was absolutely the primary focus. What does the future look like for your game? Any big plans you want to share? Well, I need to talk about something. A project that happened a long time ago. I would say probably back in 2019 or 18, probably 18. I actually was working on a remake. In fact, no, it was later than that even. It was 2021? In fact, yeah, no, it was during lockdown. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting the original game's development and the remake's development confused. Yes, I was working on a remake. And not just like I've ported the game to the updated version of RPG Maker and I'm changing the small things here and there to make the game a bit more balanced. No, I was fully remaking the game. I basically ported the original Vale of Darkness up to RPG Maker MV. And, got all the events working out, and then actually had the original game playable from start to finish, with some changes due to needing different scripts and such like that. And I was pretty much ready to... I mean, I could have just shipped the game as like a slightly updated remake. I could have, but I wanted to do more. I rewrote a huge portion of the story. I had the main character. You now created two characters, and I actually had a script where you could fully customize the character. You got to make a male and female character, and whichever one you didn't choose to be your main player avatar would be another party member on your own team. which was a really cool idea. And again, thanks to the script and like the assets I was able to pull, you had full customization. You could make your character a human, a faunus, whatever, and there was a ton, like whatever color you wanted to choose, anything. There was a ton of customization options available for you. And then, instead of just having you being in this awkward, like, third wheel position where you just kind of went between both teams, you actually got your own team with 3 other characters that were new to the game. You would have the other created character, the gender that you didn't pick. You would have Vanilla, who was a new character who was completely mute and wielded a parasol. Yeah, I was going full on AU with this shit. So the idea was that Neo was actually going to infiltrate Beacon as a disguised student. And what would happen over the course of their kind of character arc is they would kind of slowly come over to the good side by hanging out with the main cast. And then when we got to the events of Volume 3, because yes, I was going to do Volume 3, you would actually have the ability to change fate and save Torchwig's life, which would permanently bring her to your side as Neo. So Neo would actually become a fully fledged party member for your team. And then the final character, well, again, this is getting more into cringe. 15-year-old me here, I guess at this point I would have been about I would have been a lot older. In my early 20s, I was going to include another original character from my own original kind of series. I was trying to make my own original game, but that kind of petered out. A character called Spell, who I was going to kind of rename to Bronze in the game. And they were going to like have like an almost like Final Fantasy VIII style gunblade and such like that. And they were essentially going to fight alongside the party as like its final member, and they would kind of be like there as well. So yeah, you would have your own team of 4 that would do different things and interact with the story in different ways. And yeah, the big thing is that I was going to go into Volume 3, and you would have a bunch of opportunities to like change the fate of a few characters, like saving Pyrrha and even Torchwick as well, which can change a lot of things about the show. Because in the original game, my big thing was like, I kind of wanted to be like, at the end of the day, this game could technically be considered canon. Which is why, spoilers if you've not played it, in the original game, your character gets so powerful and changes events in history too much that they essentially get erased from existence. Basically, nobody remembers who they were. So basically, what the canon, exactly the RWBY TV show would be then, would just be the kind of altered memories of everyone to make that character missing. You know, certain things that the main character did would actually be done by, you know, the main cast. But with this version, I decided to drop that entirely and just have them be their own separate team with their own separate storyline that still got to interact with the full members of the RWBY cast and have all the same friendship events and such like that, but also have these 3 new characters that you could also work with. And again, there was a ton of opportunity for character growth and, you know, different events and such there, and just being able to play around with these little action figures in my own little world a bit more. And the game was completely overhauled graphically. It looked a lot different. I went from a side view battle system where you actually saw the little sprites in combat to a front view system with animated portraits that I would have pulled from RWBY Amity Arena, and voice lines for the characters that I would have pulled from Grim Eclipse. So the battle system actually had moving animated portraits in battle, as well as voice lines for each of the characters in fights as well. It was a real, and I even had art that I traced, again, young me is very disappointed, of like official art to make the art for the unique, for the like Vanilla and Bronze as well. So that was all pretty much ready to go. I had even done the story up until the end of the Beacon initiation. I had it all ready to go. I was set. It was going surprisingly well. I'd created a really solid foundation for this new remake. And then the hard drive that I had the game on corrupted, and I did not have a backup. And it completely killed my motivation to continue the project. And unfortunately, to this day, I still don't even have any evidence that it existed. None of the art assets survived, none of the I don't have any recordings of the gameplay, or anything. All I can tell you about is what I had planned and what I had done up until that point. And I was quite proud of the new system. In fact, I even changed the random encounters to be overworld enemy encounters as well. kind of making these amorphous, grim slimes that appeared on the overworld that would transform into the proper Grim once you actually entered combat, so you didn't have to deal with random encounters. You could avoid enemies and actually play the game at the pace you wanted to. And again, I'd plan to remaster like all the friendship events and maybe take out a lot of the cringe aspects of it and just do the whole game up again with a new coat of paint and just a much more solid gameplay system. And it all just went in an instant. So, leading into the next question. If you can give advice to anyone who may want to make their own fan game, what advice would you give? Well, first of all, back up your damn game. Have an online copy, have a backup on a USB, have something, because losing that it sucks. It really, really sucks. But, aside from the technical stuff, just do it. Just set yourself a goal. Set yourself a goal. Set your expectations. Understand your limits, especially if you're a solo developer who doesn't really have a budget. Because again, when I made Vale of Darkness, my budget was the cost of RPG Maker VXS at the time, which I got on sale for like £8. So yeah. But that's the thing, you don't need a budget to make a game. There are plenty of assets out there that people are more than happy for you to use. Always ask permission. I didn't ask for permission, I asked for forgiveness when I made this game. Again, teenage me was an idiot. Just get as many assets as you can and just make something, but understand your limits. Vale of Darkness was a project where I worked with what I had, but when I tried to move on to things after Vale of Darkness, I tried to do things that I was not capable of, and in the end, when I couldn't make the project that I wanted to make, I was burned out. And kind of disheartened and all that. So just know your limits. Don't be afraid to learn new things. Expand your craft and become skilled at things that you might not already be skilled at. But if there's some things you just can't do on your own, get help. Or find a way to get around it. Sometimes the most creative aspects of a video game come from its limitations. So you may find a way to get around things that you would have had trouble with otherwise. But regardless, my big advice is just do it. Do it within your limits and make something that you can make. Don't spread yourself too thin. Don't set yourself hard due dates or anything like that. Just have it ready when it's ready. To be honest, the trick is to basically have the full game ready to go before you even announce a demo. I mean, when I developed the original Vale of Darkness, the game came out in like early beta waves. I did have I basically had like the demo, which covered the opening sequence. Then I had the Volume 1 release, which covered all of the events up to the end of Volume 1. And then I had the full game release, which did Volume 2. That's actually a decent way to do it, slightly episodic, giving your player base a way to kind of come back to the game over and over again. But if you want to just go for a full, whole hog, complete release right from the start, then that actually might be the best way to do it. But yeah, as long as you are making something that you are absolutely passionate about, you can't possibly go wrong. I mean, you certainly can't do worse than Vale of Darkness. Okay, I know it's not actually as bad as I make it out to be, but again, I would do so many things differently now. Heck, maybe I should. Maybe I should take another crack at that remake. Nah, I'm too busy. I got a full-time job now. Yeah, that's the thing. I had the lack of responsibility and the tons of free time that a teenager would have, so I was able to make this game pretty much without consequence. Don't know if I could do that now. Who knows? Maybe I'll return to the concept one of these days. Maybe I'll actually have the money to employ some artists and, scripters and actually get some stuff working. Who knows? But I definitely would not count on that ever happening. But maybe you can. In fact, tell you what, I'm never going to touch Vale of Darkness again, realistically. If anybody wants to try their hand at actually making the game, like remaking it and doing their own thing with it, go for it. I gave people permission to make sequels back in the day. That permission still stands. Anyone who wants to make a sequel, a remake, whatever of Vale of Darkness, you have my full permission. Because I, in some way, want to give back to the community. The community that essentially made me who I am today. The appreciation that I have for animation video game development, content creation, as I'm a almost full-time YouTuber now. And I hate calling myself that, but that's basically what I am. I owe that to Vale of Darkness. I owe that to RWBY for giving me that drive and that ability to make things, to create things, to have enough confidence in myself that what I can put out there will be appreciated by people. And so I want to give that back in whatever way I can. If you play and enjoy Vale of Darkness, great. But if you want to sit down and remake the game, take ideas from that game to put into your own, make a sequel, maybe actually do Volume 3, do whatever you like. If it is your idea of like a first project to just dip your toes into it, just go ahead and do it. I can't provide anything material. I can't provide you with the base code of the game or like the basic project of the game or anything like that to look at. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore. Maybe someone out there does. I mean, technically, you could download the game, and I think there's a way to, like, you know, break the lock on it so you can actually open it up in the editor and see for yourself. It's a mess. Probably optimized things better than I did, especially the daily event system. Holy shit. You couldn't even see the whole event on the screen. It was so long. But yeah, no, feel free to, if anybody wants to tinker around with Vale of Darkness and create their own thing out of it, feel free. Anything that I've put out there as far as Vale of Darkness content is concerned, including the game itself, it's free to tinker around with. That is the most I can do for the community. And I suppose I've already kind of done this, but any additional remarks or comments is the final question. Like I said, Vale of Darkness is now yours. Do whatever you want with it. Don't feel like you're going to step on my toes by turning it into something else, or making the same thing but better. I encourage it. And I'd be curious to see what you guys come up with. So, to kind of end this all off, I'm not sure how long this was supposed to be. The recording says 41 minutes, so I'm going to go with it. As a final kind of remark, once again, a huge thank you to the organisers of this event for reaching out to me and letting me be a part of this absolutely spectacular event. Obviously, even since the event was initially announced to be happening, a lot has happened. Rooster Teeth itself has closed down, and the future of RWBY itself is uncertain, although it seems positive at the moment. And for what it's worth, I haven't seen anything RWBY related in a long time. In fact, I kind of fell off, I think, around Volume 6 or 7, whichever the one where Crow killed a guy. I can't remember. And I haven't really watched it since, and I haven't watched anything Rooster Teeth related in a long time, except for Death Battle, if that counts. But Rooster Teeth as a whole, and RWBY especially, was a huge part of my life, and I will forever be thankful for the times that I got out of it, because again, it came up at a very tough time in my life, and it helped me get through it and become the person who I am today. And I love the person who I am today, the things that I get to do, the people I get to work with, the things I'm now capable of accomplishing. I mean, hell, I never would have been able to sit in front of a microphone and talk so earnestly and openly and confidently if it wasn't for Vale of Darkness giving me that push to put myself out there, to want to interact with people, and to make things that I'm proud of and that I want other people to enjoy. Vale of Darkness is the reason I am who I am today, in some shape or form. Even a small part of me is because of this game. Because of RWBY. And because of, you know, people like the ones that organised this event, the people who are watching this video now, the community, the ones that went to RTX and stuff like that. All of you guys are incredible. The artists, the creators, and the people who just engage positively. I mean, every community has its bad apples, but let's not get into that. So, I'll end this off here, because I ramble. If you couldn't tell, I ramble a lot. So I'll end this off with a final note. Thank you all so much for indulging my ramblings. Thank you all so much for having me here. Thank you all so much for just being you, whether you're one of the event organisers or just someone who's attending. Thank you all so much for making this amazing community what it is. And thank you for letting me be a part of it. Alright, that's enough out of me. I suppose I'll sign this off the way I sign off, I guess, my YouTube videos. Thank you all so much for watching. And who knows? Maybe I'll see you all again soon. Goodbye.